Mitch McConnell gave some statements earlier today on the Senate floor about the COVID bill. So that's how we're going to start off tonight. Listening to fucking Mitch.
Has more important outstanding business than we have days to complete it. Delivering for the American people will take focus, dexterity, and genuine bipartisanship.
When have you ever delivered for the American people?
It's my hope that our committee's work will bear fruit and a full year funding package will come to the floor in both chambers. I anticipate that the Senate will take up a one-week extension this week so the government does not close on December the 11th.
Now, we are looking at a government shutdown coming up.
Continue through the end of next week. The nation needs our Democratic colleagues to resist the temptation to play brinksmanship with long-settled policy issues or push poison pill riders.
Poison pill riders. Do you know what has been a poison pill in these bills that the Democrats won't vote for? Liability protection for corporations. Tax breaks for martini lunches. That is what Mitch McConnell has been trying to ram through. And the reason why the Democrats have been against his bills. But go on, Mitch.
That they know would tank the process. We also expect to receive and pass a conference report on the annual defense authorization, and we need to continue confirming impressive nominees.
Now, Trump says he will veto that bill if it doesn't strip the 230 protections.
We senators are no strangers to end-of-year drama.
Now, the 230 protections, that's the protections for internet companies like Facebook, Twitter, so they're not held liable for the things posted on their sites. Trump wants to strip that out of the bill. Or he said he will veto it.
By this time, the stakes are far higher. We're up against another, even steeper surge in COVID-19.
I wonder why, Mitch.
Back in the spring. Workers and small businesses are once again struggling to make ends meet as states and localities step up precautions. And while the latest news on vaccine trials suggests that victory over the virus may soon be within reach, our work in that area.
Speaking of vaccine, I didn't have time to really get into it on the show. But apparently the Trump administration turned down Pfizer's offer in the summer to sell extra vaccines to the U.S.
Is far from complete. As one recent article put it, state and local officials plead for vaccine distribution funds. Our nation's historic sprint to victory through vaccines seems poised to succeed in record time, but the critical last step, getting hundreds of millions of doses out to American people, is still in front of us. So Congress cannot stay on the sidelines. Now, yesterday, our colleague from Illinois, the Democratic whip, gave an...
But he seems perfectly happy letting the Biden administration stay on the sideline. You didn't see Mitch McConnell on the floor of the Senate talking about how they needed to begin the transition when the GSA was holding up both the funds and the access that the Biden administration needs going into January, because they will be the ones distributing the vaccine to the country.
Interview in which he named 3 examples of highly urgent matters that need to be addressed for our nation right now. This is the Democratic whip of the U.S. Senate. Here are the 3 things Senator Durbin mentioned as flashing urgent priorities. The millions of people who are going to lose their unemployment insurance the day after Christmas. The businesses that are trying to decide whether or not...
Now, when he's talking about unemployment insurance, he's not talking about the contractors, freelancers, gig workers. They lost their unemployment protection back in like October. Might have even been September. This is just regular unemployment. They had an extension in the CARES Act that was passed back in the spring that allows people to stay on unemployment. But several people have already lost their unemployment protections. Mitch.
They can continue and the vaccine logistics to make sure that this vaccine is on the vaccinating people across America as quickly as possible. Those are the three things he mentioned. Those are the three urgent issues he named as examples: ending unemployment, extending unemployment insurance, helping small businesses, and funding vaccine distribution. Well, Madam President, I do not question the sincerity of our colleague, who I believe is engaged in these discussions in good faith. But these comments illustrate perfectly a point that Republicans have been making for weeks.
Oh, they have.
These three urgent issues are issues where there is almost total bipartisan consensus.
Well, then pass a bill that has all that stuff in it
Whatsoever.
and doesn't have your martini lunches,
For a small
your tax breaks, and your liability for corporations.
Something which Democrats quickly attacked would have resolved all three of those subjects. All three of them. The targeted Republican framework extends unemployment insurance programs that will otherwise expire. It creates an entire second round of the Paycheck Protection Program for the hardest hit small businesses,
Which was rife with fraud. Wasn't going to small businesses like mine.
Check, check, check.
You see, the world has changed.
The world has changed. But his haircut hasn't since the
Democratic
80s.
Whip is right to recognize these three subjects are especially urgent because they are especially urgent. That's why Republicans have been trying over and over to get them passed. That's why Republicans have been saying for months that Speaker Pelosi and the Democratic leaders should let Congress get outcomes in all the places where we already agree, rather than holding everything hostage over their most controversial parties.
To actually give direct payments to people.
But month after month after
But
month,
the Republicans do not give a shit.
Democratic leaders who have said that no relief whatsoever can pass, no consensus items can become law, unless multiple controversial areas where we don't agree are resolved to the Democrats' liking.
He is such a disingenuous piece of
That's
shit.
why the Democratic leader had every single Senate Democrat vote to filibuster a targeted COVID-19 release package back in September. And again
Because it had
in
the things that I
October.
just talked about.
That bill would have taken care of small businesses, unemployment insurance,
Gonna tell my
vaccine
kids this was Mitch
distribution.
McConnell.
months ago. Months ago.
Unfortunately, he's looking better now. His hands
Democrats
aren't all black, like his heart.
Well, I think if the Senate Democratic leader would allow it, the three
And I speak from personal knowledge. I know Mitch McConnell. I am from Kentucky. I did news in Kentucky for several years. I met Mitch McConnell on multiple occasions. And it blows my mind because most politicians you meet, you understand why they win elections, why they're politicians when you meet them. They're actually very charismatic. They'll look you in the eye, they'll talk to you about you, they'll remember your name. Now that might not be something of substance, but they make you feel like you're the only person in the room when they're talking to you. Mitch McConnell is not like that. Mitch McConnell really is a ghoul. There is nothing likable about the man. How he has been reelected over and over again just boggles my mind. One of the most absolute powerful men in the country. Incredibly rich. His wife, Elaine Chao, who I think is still at the Department of Transportation, her dad is a Chinese shipping CEO. His family needs to be investigated for all the under-the-table deals that they have done to enrich themselves.
three things that the Democratic whip mentioned just yesterday: small business aid, re-upping unemployment aid, and setting up vaccine distribution would pass the Senate in a landslide. A targeted compromise on the most urgent items would pass by a massive bipartisan margin. We could easily put together a whole slew of common sense policies, including those three and other things like legal protections at universities.
There you go.
And the Council,
Corporations.
American Council on Education have been pleading for. Bring it to the floor and pass it. Everyone knows why this hasn't happened.
Because you're a piece of shit. Yes, we do.
The Speaker of the House and the Democratic leader have spent months tying the most bipartisan common sense policies to their most controversial requests.
Yes, it's called leverage, Mitch.
And saying the country can't get the former unless it gets the latter. Their strategy's been all or nothing. And so struggling Americans have, of course, gotten nothing. Well, we're down to the wire, Madam President, down to the wire. The light at the end of the tunnel is in sight. Operation Warp Speed seems poised to deliver vaccines on an historic, almost miraculous timetable.
All right, that is enough of Mitch McConnell. I'll just keep getting more and more pissed. Now, AOC and Bernie Sanders have both come out against bills that do not include another round of $1,200 stimulus checks, which are not included in the bipartisan, the Manchin-Romney bill, the $908 billion bill, far less than the $2 trillion bill that the House passed back in the spring. If people don't get unemployment assistance, and if they don't get a stimulus check, the relief isn't going to be felt in their lives, not in any substantive way. In substantive. Fuck. I fucked that up. Representatives Rashida Tlaib, GOP Senator Josh Hawley have also urged lawmakers to approve a second round of stimulus checks. This is bipartisan. You can see CEOs of companies going on cable news talking about it. Mitch McConnell is the obstruction. Mitch McConnell is the hemorrhoid on American life.